Testing. Yeah. Is this the place to stand? Get up here? Okay. Good? Okay. No, I got it. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's such an honor and pleasure to be here with such terrific friends and partners of the Shalom Hartman Institute, the congregation B'nai Jeshurun, and Rabbis Sol and Matalon. Thank you for hosting us. You're such good friends and wonderful partners. Hi, my name is Rachel Jacoby Rosenfield. I'm the CEO of Shalom Hartman North America. I recently returned from a... Thank you. I recently returned from a brief visit to Israel. And of course, all the stories we've all been reading in the news, those were the stories I heard firsthand from friends and from colleagues and from shopkeepers and from so many. And over the weeks since, I've cycled through all of the feelings all of us have had: anxiety, grief, fear, relief, sadness, all of those feelings. And I've found that coming into community and coming together with other people like we're doing right now is the thing that gives me solace and creates meaning for me. And I hope that's what we can all do here tonight. I want you to know that since October 7th, the Shalom Hartman Institute, both in Israel and in North America, has worked tirelessly to provide comfort and to try to make some sense of this terrible moment we're in. We've provided pastoral support to families from the South and grieving families through our network of Israeli rabbis. We've produced podcasts, For Heaven's Sake, and Identity Crisis, to try to wrap our heads around what's going on right now. We created a new blog called Notes from the Field, which is an attempt to capture in writing, in short form, some of the thoughts and some of the meaning making that's happening in with our scholars and in our research center now. And we've done a lot of learning online and in person like we're doing tonight. I'm so grateful, we are all so grateful to all of you for coming here together to learn, for being supporters of the Hartman Institute, and for being comfort and solace and meaning makers to one another. Our panel tonight needs no introduction, so I'm, without further ado, going to turn it over to Rabbis Sol, Matalon, and of course, my wonderful colleague and friend, Rabbi Donniel Hartman.
Thank you, Rachel, for all your amazing work. We want to welcome everyone again. I know the board is gathering of the Hartman Institute, so welcome. And for those who have never been in our community before, we're really glad to have you, and particularly for this moment. I guess we wanted to start really, in many ways, the Hartman Institute is a beacon of a think tank and a way to reframe thinking and to push people to learn and grow and not just knee-jerk reaction to things. But it's hard to do that when you're in the midst of a crisis. And in the midst, in a sense of trying to metabolize everything that's going on. You can't, hard to sit at both levels. And so I guess we wanted to start really by asking, how are you doing today? And when Donniel Hartman thinks about your life in Israel, the commitments that you made, and what's been happening since October 7th, what are you holding?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here, and it's nice to be with the two of you. You know, the hardest thing is that what dominates you is sadness. There's so many different layers of that sadness that sometimes you don't know where to start, And so you get busy, because if you think about them, they could take over. I'm just sad that so many people feel unsafe. I'm so sad that my people feel vulnerable. I thought we were past that. I'm sad it's so many families that are broken. And that continue to be broken. And it engulfs you. And on a meta level, I'm sad because this is not what should be. Like, what's going to be? Do they think they're going to kill us and we're going to disappear? Do we think we're going to bomb Palestinian identity out of Palestinians? We know we're not. And so, it's like, you know, I don't do hopeless and I don't do pessimism, but this one is challenging. Like, I'm sad because I'm trying to figure out where we go from here. Like, what do we do? So I concentrate on my own community, where I feel I could work. What does it mean to heal Israeli society? And as you very correctly said, people for whom healing is on a very, very immediate level. It's not, they're not looking for a larger vision of tomorrow. They're just, you know, like you just imagine families of hostages. Like, what am I, you know, and they're speaking to a government. And I have no complaints of that's, you know, and they're pushing and they're fighting, you know, and Israel's talking about flooding tunnels. And like, what are they feeling? Like, what am I supposed to say to them? Like, they know. They know that we have to do things, and they're pleading for us to see them. And what are you supposed to do? So there's so much of this. There's so much of this pain, and I feel it. I feel it personally. And also, on a meta level, I know that at the end of the day, we're almost going to be in the same place we were. And I'm not sure that we're going to have the courage, because it's much harder to make certain decisions now than it was before. But at the end of the day, very courageous decisions are going to have to be made. They're going to have to be made. So, and then I get sad again for this person or for that person, or so it goes from personal to national. And the only thing, like my friends here know this. So first of all, thank God for my podcast. I don't know if anybody listens to it, but it's really good. No. It's really, really good for me. It's like, it's really, really good for me. Like, every podcast I finish, and then we call, Yossi and I call each other, so how are you feeling? You know, and it's like, it just makes it a little more manageable. But I try, like you, I'm sure. You know, like, we don't let sadness overcome us. And I don't. I never do. I'm not immune to it, but I never let it overcome me. And I'm trying. very hard, as my board knows, to think about Israel of tomorrow, knowing fully well that most Israelis can't even have that conversation now, but it's coming very, very soon. And so those are some of the things that, and it's nice to see the two of you. It really is, like just seeing the two of you and getting a hug was good.
It's great to see you also, and you've been here many times. I was reminding Donniel, the first time he spoke here was 1985. He was a rabbi in Tenafly. He was in his 20s, so it's come a long way. And he spoke with the director of Givat Chaviva, Muhammad Darawshi. In those days, it was a risk. People didn't speak with about Arabs and Jews in those days, particularly in the Orthodox community in New Jersey. So just wanted to put that on the table. But you said, you know, when this is over, we're going to be in the same place we were before. But I want to ask you, which are the things that have been dislocated in you, like assumptions that you made before, which are no longer things that you can take for granted or that you believe? I know it's only 2 months or not even 2 months, and it's enormously traumatic, and everybody's in the process of, but 2 months later, what are the things that have shifted in you?
One of the biggest things that has shifted for me is that I cannot deny, even though I've spent much of my career trying to, that there is an evil that's at my doorstep. And my whole life, it's like that idea got in the way. It was just too inconvenient. I wanted to be too hopeful. As many of you know, I feel religiously and Jewishly obligated to see the Palestinians have a state of their home. I feel religiously obligated to that. Because Hillel taught me, what is hateful unto you, do not do unto others. That's the whole Torah. So I feel I'm yearning to see for Palestinians what I have. I felt this way very early on as a teenager. It was always self-evident to me. And I know that Hamas doesn't represent all Palestinians. But because I felt religiously obligated, I chose not to listen to the warnings that there is evil here. It's not everyone, but it's here. So people who said, look what's being taught in schools or camps, or now it's interesting, I never ignored it on my side because I take responsibility. So what is it that we teach? What are the words we say in our prayers? It's like sometimes praying for me is really difficult because I lose place because there's all these words I have to skip. Because I can't say, because I know words matter. I know words matter. So I can't pray for the rebuilding of a temple when I know that that is now a sacred place for Islam. I can't. I can't. I can't just, because now I know that there's people going up on the Temple Mount saying, yeah, like these words, it's tomorrow, tomorrow. So like, I know that words matter, and so I take responsibility for words that we say. You have chosen us over all the nations of the world. These are dangerous words. And one of the advantages that all of you have, or many of you have, is you're not fluent in Hebrew. So it's just a word, it's like...
We're canceling Hebrew classes.
It's like, really, Hebrew's dangerous. It's like, so you could say it and it doesn't mean anything, but in Israel they speak Hebrew. They actually know what they're saying. So I took these words, I take our words very seriously. I am committed to trying to fight, to elevate the moral standards of my people. I take, but on the Palestinian side, I was paternalistic and infantilizing. And I didn't see, and I never wanted to give an accounting for that which would make my dream unrealizable. And I see it now. I can't not see it. And anything that we're going to do in the future, and I still am religiously obligated to see the Palestinians have their own country. But now, there's an evil in the way, and that's probably one of, I know I was wrong. And it has to enter into all of our thinking and still dream of a better tomorrow, knowing that there's a real problem here. It's a real problem. And it's not the settlements, and it's not just Netanyahu, and it's not just our side. And listen, the one prayer I have no I pray for the day when Ben Gvir and Smotrich will not be representatives in my government.
Amen.
I could pray for that, but I know that even when they go away, it's not going to, we solved the problem. Now it's just going to be fine. We're going to have to do much more work, and we're going to have to demand much more of the Palestinian people. And so there is some, I wanted to deny it. I didn't want to see it because it was a very uncomfortable truth. And I can't do that anymore. It's too prevalent.
Now, there's been a lot of, thank you for that honesty. There's been a lot of course, realization of vulnerability on the part of Israeli society, right? There was a feeling, maybe some sort of a illusion of invincibility. How did this affect you in that sense? What do you see around you? What do you feel about that sense of that shift in Israeli society?
I don't feel that. I'm denying that. I don't feel it. I walk around with my gun and I feel I'm safe. And it's foolish. I don't think October 7th created a sense of vulnerability for the state of Israel. I think it undermined personal safety on a level that we thought we were free from. So and I moved to Israel in 1971. And there were moments of First Intifada, Second Intifada. I still feel that Israel is strong. If anything undermines my vulnerability, it's not so much October 7th, it's Iran. And it's not a nuclear Iran. It's seeing the coalition of people who want to kill me and who have cruise missiles that could travel 2,000 miles. Maybe the Houthis, and whoever thought of, like, really, which one of you ever even engaged? Like, do any of you know exactly who these, like, where did you get hold of a 2,000 kilometer, so I could shoot it out, but like, where did that come from? And like, it's just sort of, you've been, like, for the last number of years, every day or two, Israel bombs in Syria. And we're living under the notion, yeah, we got it covered. We got it covered. We don't have anything covered. So it's not, I don't feel that Hamas threatened my existence. They hurt me. They hurt my people. But there is a larger move going on. And do you know where I saw it? I saw it in the way that Israelis responded to President Biden. When he came, we really, really felt safer. And that's an anti-Zionist move. Like, really? Like, we strut. Like Israelis strut. Well, you speaking about arrogance, like we are, like I have my gun and I think I'm safe. Right? I have a little pistol and I think I'm safe. Like, you're an idiot. But we strut. Like, do you know how happy we were when the 2 aircraft carrier groups came to the Middle East? And we have been talking about the fact that we're the aircraft carrier. So something, it wasn't the penetration of the border. It's a deeper, there's the personal lack of safety, but there's something is shifting. And Israelis, and it'll be interesting to see what happens from this. We actually have to admit that we need the world. That the Zionist story, that we are a nation that lies apart, and all we need from America is a veto in the Security Council, not true. We actually need somebody. And Iran is a little more complicated. You know, and there's some Israelis who are still strutting. Yeah, we should just take on Hezbollah. Like, just get rid of the Hezbollah problem. I haven't seen you get rid of the Hamas problem. Like us, not us. Like let's, like, you could get into that arrogance. But I think there is a larger vulnerability that's going to challenge Israel after the war and its relationship with the world. Because I think as a country, we're up against an enemy which has abilities that are going to challenge us, that it's not just, you know, there's a saying in Hebrew, Tzal Yedaich Lagiv. You know, the army's going to know how to respond. It's harder. And that's going to mean we're going to have to look at allies and see, Hamas didn't take away from me my sense of security in the state of Israel. It represented an evil that I have to take much more seriously and that I can't ignore. But I think the larger consequence of how the war unfolded, but I know many Israelis do feel that vulnerability. But that is, on a personal level, it doesn't come from there. Something larger is shifting that I think we haven't yet fully internalized.
Thanks. I'm curious, I was in your home for Shabbat dinner on an interfaith clergy trip from Manhattan over the summer, which was in the midst of all the pro-democracy protests, and you spoke a lot about kind of the work that needed to be done in Israeli society to really grapple with moral questions. And then you just said that you think we're going to go back to where we were. So, you know, after this, we'll kind of go back to where we were, which feels to me a little bit unimaginable. Like how could we get back to where we were in the summer, or like as a you know, as a people where certain issues that had been suppressed for so long finally rose up in the image because of Smotrich and Ben Gvir, but they were true well before that. And then you add the layer of the evil that you just spoke about and that you've confronted in a way that you hadn't really taken seriously before. So I'm just curious, like, what's the work when you think about your role as Rabbi Donniel Hartman and the Hartman Institute, which recently rejiggered its structure to make a commitment to 20% of its work being around the Palestinian-Israeli public and pluralism and moral integrity, all these issues that have been such a centerpiece of your work, and integrating this, not that it's a new evil, but like, what do you think your work is now with that integration of those things?
Just first, I wanted to clarify, when I said we're going to go back to where we were, I meant we're still going to have Gaza and Palestinians. That's going back to the fact that
the same story still is going to exist.
There's like, you know, so you move 2 million people to southern Gaza, they're still in Gaza. Right. You're still going to have Gaza, you're still going to have Judea and Samaria, you're still going to have a Palestine. On that sense, the conflict is the same, right. but who we are in that conflict, but the need to think about it is the same. But on the level that you're speaking about, and as I shared with many of our board, my values are the same. I'm still a liberal Zionist and a liberal Jew. And for me, I still believe that all human beings are created in the image of God. I still believe that all human beings are endowed with inalienable rights, Jew and non-Jew alike. I still believe in a Jewish state that also has to be a state that gives equality to all of its citizens. I still believe in religious pluralism and the need for all Jews to not just be given citizenship in Israel, but for their Judaism to have a place in the state of Israel. I still believe that it is our mitzvah to pursue peace. So I haven't changed. Like, I haven't said, okay, like now I don't care about religious pluralism. Of course I do. It's just, what's changed is it's just going to be harder. The work is going to be much, much harder. And one of the challenges that we're going to face, and all of you are going to face, is that I don't know where you're going to find it, but we're going to have, again, a lot of patience for processes to restart all over again. Just to restart all over again. You know, I have my partner in the room for Jewish-Palestinian coexistence, Rana Fahum, is here. She's my partner. She's changed the way I look at the world. I don't see the world the same as I saw it before I knew her. I don't. I don't see the news I don't see people. I'm a different person. And I'm still that person. But our work together is going to be harder because Jews have changed and so have Palestinians. It's not that our values have changed, but the people we're speaking to have changed. And I said, I don't want to, because Rana's reporting to the board tomorrow, so I'll leave that for, but you know what, I'll say it, board members, you just smile and sound interested when Rana says it tomorrow. But like part of our discussion was, we were really starting to do coexistence work as if it was achievable. We really said, right now, Israeli Jews and Israeli Palestinians are ready. What's some of the curriculum we have to do to bring it home? And we were talking about bringing it home. Like, we saw it. And we saw the amount of people signing up and coming and interested, and we were dreaming, and it was like, it's like we had like millions of dollars of dreams, way more than our resources, and it was glorious because it was all achievable. Because you have Israeli Arab Palestinians who want to be Israeli citizens, and you have Israeli Jews who are realizing that we have 20% of our society that we have to account for. People had moved. And now our curriculum, before we could talk about how we're going to exist tomorrow, all our curriculum has to deal with how you're feeling today. And if you don't deal adequately and long enough with how people are feeling today, you're not going to get them to plan for tomorrow. And so the work is the same. The goals are the same. It just, you can't. Jews are going to have to come to terms with the fact that Palestinian Israelis have multiple identities and multiple loyalties. And they're going to have to come to terms with that. And that means, yes, they do mourn for civilian deaths in Gaza. Doesn't mean that they accept and celebrate October 7th, but they do mourn. We're going to have to come to terms with that. And a lot of Israeli Jews have difficulty with that. They want you to pick. Like, who do you love more? And a lot of Israeli Arab Palestinians are going to have to come to terms with the fact that there are a lot of Jews who are afraid of them right now. They just are. And so just working the present, a lot of our educational programming is going to have to deal with the present for us to be able to implement some of our dreams for tomorrow. It's just, we're going to have to work much harder, more creatively, and as I said tomorrow, we're going to have to do a lot of listening to where people are before we could give anybody advice. Like, people were ready for our advice. Now, educators have to shut up. You have to do a lot of listening and let people tell you where they are and feel seen by you. And then, you know, it was a glorious time. This last year, you know, while I was like happier than a pig in mud. You know, I was just, we were there. We really were. We were there. We were on the cusp of winning liberal Zionism and liberal Judaism. And, okay, so it's going to take us another it'll be another 5 years. But where we need to go is not different. Just who's going to want to get there with us and how we get them there with us might change.
I wanted to ask you what you see from there about here and the relationship. What do you feel? What do you see? What have you been reading What have you been hearing? You were here for a few days, I guess. So what do you pick up from here?
Another thing that I denied, another mistake that I made, and that there's real fear here. And at the Hartman Institute, we have no Torah for that fear. We told you, ignore it. It's not real. Our message was, as my father says, it was Sinai, not Auschwitz. And we were wrong. And we have to sit down now and take into account that your experiences have also changed. They have. There's real fear. Now, again, from far away, I still see Jews in the United States and Canada as an unbelievably privileged minority of power who are at home. I don't feel that it's not existential anti-Semitism. And my colleague Yehuda made a distinction between uncomfortable and unsafe, and he would probably add a third category. There's uncomfortable, afraid, and unsafe. And they're not the same. They're just not. And part of what we have to do is, just like those types of categories that he's working on, are really important categories. But the fear is real. Now, how do we deal with that? What does that mean about North American Jewish identity? What does it mean about our community? What does it mean about belonging to the Jewish people? And what is the relationship between anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism? These are issues that at the Hartman Institute we denied as having any significance for contemporary Jewish life. And we were wrong. And we're going to work. And we're going to talk. And you, again, know more than me. But one of the great, we don't have an American and Canadian friends at the Shalom Hartman Institute. We have Shalom Hartman Institute of North America. We have colleagues and faculty and scholars who are here. And we have students who we could learn from. It's different. And we also have to talk to Jews differently. We do. We have to see them differently. And then we're going to have to think about how Israel changes in the midst of this. There are some Jews who are moving further away at this moment, and some Jews who are reconnecting precisely at this moment. And like, part of our challenge, and this is, I love it. I'm not a neurosurgeon, so I can make mistakes. It's like, really, it's like part of all of our jobs is to recognize what we knew and now what has changed and what we don't know. And the worst thing to do is to constantly be equipped with your message yesterday. Like you can't. We have to grow. And growing is looking at changing reality. Like we were speaking, American Jewish experience is not the same. So how do we now think about it? What are the categories that we use? Are we overusing the category of anti-Semitism? Does it matter if any? Again, I don't trust myself right now because I'm an anti-Semitism denier. So I have thoughts, but I don't hold them. I don't hold by myself yet. In other words, I have to learn. I have to talk to more people because my basic instincts were wrong and I have to figure some things out.
What about the Auschwitz category?
That is easier for me. But I don't know if Auschwitz only meant Auschwitz or means anti, but this is not
the Holocaust
Auschwitz.
Keeps, I mean, that's been...
I don't feel that language resonates. It doesn't resonate with me at all, but with people it does, so I have to talk. But with me it doesn't, you know, I have difficulty using that language for contemporary North America. When today, the major presidents of universities were called to Capitol Hill to give an accounting. This is not 1935. It's not. Doesn't mean it's everything that we hoped for. So the language is clearly overstated. My gut feeling is that we are using it too broadly. It makes it easy because you don't have to respond to the content of what someone says when you categorize them as an anti-Semite. You don't have to engage with them. Now, again, there are people who we just shouldn't engage with. They don't interest me. And there's nothing that I'm going to say that's going to convince them anyway. But when you spread it too broadly, you're including people who we can engage with and have to fight for. There's people who we could bring into our camp, but it's going to take us a lot of thought, a lot of work, and we're also going to have to look at what's going on in our society. Why is it that so many people have difficulty associating morality with Zionism? Now, for some people, it's because their anti-Zionism is like anti-Semitism. It's not, they don't hate Jews only, but Israel is always wrong. Israel is the epitome of evil. So I have nothing to say to them. If I'm the most evil kind, like, okay, you know, my job is to protect myself from you, protect my kids from you. You're not a dialogue partner if I am the embodiment of evil. But I don't think we've done enough to speak about Zionism and morality. I don't think we have. And when I call it all anti-Semitic, I don't have to do any work anymore. I don't have to. They hate me, they're evil, and I don't have to engage in any process of self-reflection. So I worry. I don't know yet the lines, because as an anti-Semitism denier, I have to spend time seeing something that I didn't see. I didn't look at it enough, but together with my colleagues, I'm going to learn. But I am concerned about overusing it, not because it's going to alienate us, because it's going to exempt us from having to do some of the serious work that we're going to have to do if we're going to have the Judaism and the Zionism that we really believe in. And so I'm watching that, and I feel like I have to learn.
We had a group of Israeli women here on Friday night that I got to meet with, Israeli women leaders, and when I went to meet with them, they were still processing some of their time, and one of them said basically that normally they see a great tension between American Judaism and Israeli Judaism, or Israelis and American Jews, Israeli Jews and American Jews, around the Jewish peoplehood questions, and on this visit they felt it disappear. And so I'm curious, I mean, there's obviously, particularly in the American Jewish community, there's been a distancing from the far left, but in some way, the general Jewish community has come together in America. And I think between American Jews and Israel, Jewish peoplehood questions feel like they've become a little simpler in these days. And what one of the women said was that there's something to work with here. Also, Rabbi Nami Kalman was here a couple of Shabbat ago and spoke to that. We have to work with this. So I'm curious, since this is part of your work, when you think of what this moment has held, obviously it's held a lot of horror and devastation, and at the same time there's some kernel of something that may be something to work with. Do you think it's there, and what might be there to work with?
It's there, but don't trust it. There's an open door, but October 7th is not going to keep us together for a long time. It's not. I don't think it's going to have staying power. I think you're going to see it begin to fray within a few months. And part of what I worry about, just like on the anti-Semitism, is that we get sloppy. Like we can. It's true. We feel together now, but we're sitting Shiva together now. And, you know, I know it's crass, but nobody ever argues about who you sit next to during Shiva. They do argue.
You haven't been to our shul.
Weddings, though? Like we do, like, why am I sitting at that table? There is a dimension of mourning which is deep. Now, but it's like any family. Like, if you think it's going to last, if you use it and you say to your brothers and sisters, I see you, like, now let's not go back to who we were. Let's work. Then you have a chance. But if you think the Shiva itself is going to create a warm, loving family, it's just not. There's an opportunity, and it's true. There are people who, one of the categories that I and the iEngage team who I work with developed is I do believe that there is a large group of Jews, there are some Jews who were untroubled, uncommitted about Israel. And they had just basically said, it's just too much effort. Like, I'm not even angry. It's just, I'm not interested anymore. I'm not fighting against it. I'm not Jewish Voices for JVP. I'm just not for Jewish Voices for Palestine. I'm not for peace, but there's another group of some student. Yeah, there's too many. There's like groups. It's stuff. Keeping all of them together. So they're not. I wish they were so ideological. They're just. It's just disappointing. Zionism and Israel are disappointing. Again, as my colleague Yehuda beautifully said, we demand loyalty and we don't speak about Israel as an inspiration. And they're looking and just, it's not interesting to me. And they just checked out. It's not that they think they're that they think that we are the great evil. It's just, there's nothing about Israel that's interesting. You're not dealing with Palestinians. You're not dealing with human rights. You don't have religious pluralism. Okay, you're my family. That's all. There is a possibility of some groups of Jews realizing that some of the communities in which they found an identity are no longer places they want to be. But that doesn't mean that they're going to want to join unless we don't create a community which could be a little more exciting for them. If Zionism is a community in Israel, in America or Canada, that doesn't engage with serious moral discourse, in a couple of months, it's going to change. And as I said this morning, when the world, whenever the end of this stage is going to come, the world is going to be pressuring in an unprecedented level for a solution for not just Gaza. It's only in some Jews' myth that you could separate Gaza from Judea and Samaria. You know, and I could hear Naftali Bennett, who I like and I think has done a tremendous amount of good. You know, and I understand, and he's speaking on BBC, and he's getting up and he's saying, we gave the Palestinians everything. They had Shangri-La. He's talking about Gaza. They had everything. And he literally is like, they even had beaches. They had beaches. What more could you possibly want? You had beaches. They had a beach. It could have been everything. So, like, that type of stuff is just not going to work. And the world is going to say, we don't want the Palestinian conflict to ignite a global war. Israel, you got to do something. And the minute they start doing that, Israelis aren't going to be ready to respond. And North American Jews are going to be ready to respond. And they're going to, because they're ready to respond now. And the fact that they feel alienated from groups of, and again, everybody has different terms, of certain left-wing or progressive groups with whom they identified, and now that they can't be there, doesn't mean that we're creating a hospitable home. So, like, it's...
But there's an important sector of this community which is also in the hands of the right wing of AIPAC and, you know, intransigent about a Palestinian state and things like that. So, I mean, don't minimize.
Oh, I'm not. I just never, again, I never worry about what other people teach. We have an open marketplace of ideas. We got to get, we just have to work harder. We could win that too. So it's true. There are people for whom, and again, you have to remember, even AIPAC, we have to be really careful. AIPAC is officially still for a two-state solution. Like, even the terms, like, but there are people, I don't think there are many people in North America who are against a two-state solution. I think there are groups of people who don't believe that it is viable. That's not a foolish argument.
On the right and the left.
On the right and the, we're all going to have to talk about it. And even here, we're going to have to find new partners. But I think you're going to see a tremendous amount of movement. And so you ask about the potential. There's going to be conflicts 2-3 months down the road. You know, again, depends when things change. It could be 6 months, but it's going to come. Now, we make a major error if we believe that anti-Semitism and alienation from the progressive community has created for us a new surplus of allies who we could take for granted. It's created for us, it's like a birthright trip. It's like, I love birthright. I do think it's great. But just anybody who thinks that birthright is going to solve the problem of Jewish identity is an idiot. They're just idiot. I'm sorry, they're idiot. There's no other word.
Do you have any strong feelings about it?
And if you'd ask me, would you contribute to Birthright? Sure. I think it's a great program. I think it's phenomenal. It's unbelievable. But anybody who thinks that a 10-day trip is going to create a life transformation and a new engagement with Judaism alone without doing anything else, okay, that's why we're in trouble today. So similarly, you know, anybody who thinks that this rise of anti-Semitism is going to cause an influx of Jews now saying, okay, it just doesn't matter anymore, I'm back home, I have nowhere else to go, I don't see that. I think we have an opportunity. And if we're smart, we have people who might be interested in listening to a meaningful Torah, people who wouldn't come into class, but now you have to earn it. You just have to earn it. So there's an opportunity, and again, don't worry. I know it's easy for me to say you live here, and I'm sure, because, you know, we've been talking for, 40 years. Like, we know it's, and I appreciate the loneliness sometimes that you feel. But you have always, we know each other less, like both of you, this place always stands for, with huge courage, regardless of what other people say. You stand for what we should stand for. and you try, and you take principled decisions all the time, regardless of the price you pay and where the Jewish community is, and the people who come to you come because they know at the end of the day what you stand for. And I know there's people out there, but we have to believe that we could win for the marketplace of Zionist conversation in the Jewish world. We can. And there'll be people who won't support us, but there'll be people who will, and we just have to stand up and say what needs to be said. And it's true, a lot of Jews don't know how to speak about Zionism to their children. And they don't know how to speak about Zionism even to themselves. And they undersell Zionism because they believe that it could only be about loyalty, and it can't be an expression of a profound liberal Jewish agenda. And we undersell it. And when you undersell something, you get what you pay for.
I want to ask you, I think it's very important to redefine what Zionism means now. I think that there's an opportunity, I agree with you. It has to be filled with meaning and with purpose and with complexity. And I recently heard from a number of students who are defining themselves as liberal Zionists now, who wouldn't have done it a few months ago. Openly, publicly. The word Zionist was not comfortable. And now, in spite of everything, people are standing up and saying, members of this congregation who are in college, I'm a liberal Zionist, on the record. So I think we have to grab this and support this and fill it with meaning. And it's no longer a dirty word, but it cannot be empty. I want to take you back to Israel and imagine when this ends in a few months. And the fractures of society are going to reappear after Shiva, as you said. What's the work that needs to be done or can be done? What's your contribution in terms of what can begin to heal some of the ruptures so that it doesn't go back to where it was before?
We're spending all of our time thinking about this now. And it's like there's an inner conflict that you have, an inner contradiction. On the one hand, I tell everybody, all my faculty, and any leadership group that we're studying with and that we're training, that I need you to channel your inner Socrates, in which, just like Socrates, who says, I am the wisest man on earth because I am the only one who knows that I don't know, everybody has to channel right now some of their inner Socrates. And be aware of the fact that you just really don't know. And at the same time, our convictions about the Israel that we yearn for are as strong and more important than ever. Like there's a life force about Israel that's there. There's a powerful life force. And there's a remarkable people who showed that life force. Remarkable. Like when you think about it, I remember years in which Israel was a top-down society. And anybody who thought that they wanted to change Israel, it was all about influencing politicians. Well, anybody who thinks that today has been asleep for the last 12 months. Israeli society is alive. Israeli society is empowered. The Israeli citizen gets up and doesn't wait for a government. It's running before the government even wakes up. There's forces at play who are just fighting to heal our country. They're there. They're waiting. They don't want to hear a message of hopelessness. They don't want to hear a message of death and of perennial negativity. they're ready to fight for something. And so, while we don't yet know how to do it, and we don't yet know the deep consequences of what this war has done to us. And it's not just October 7th. It's not. Our kids are dying again. And our kids haven't been dying for a long time. They're dying again. And there's a lot of broken families. We don't know the consequence. And I'm talking just about Jews. I'm not talking right now about Palestinians who also have traumas. I'm just talking now about my Jewish community. We don't know fully how to talk with them yet. And as rabbis, you know that very often your job is just to be with people. So we don't know, but at the same time, we're gonna need hope. We're gonna need a vision. We're gonna need a purpose. And that purpose can't just be to rebuild that which was destroyed. And that purpose cannot just be to be united. That purpose has to be a vision of a country that we're excited about. That's what brought people into the streets. And so I'm hoping that this, like, I know where we have to go and I don't know how to do it, and it's that process of channeling those two things together, of caution and vision at the same time. If we do those two, listen, there's Jewish people, you know, I know it's a cliche, but I just happen to believe in it. It's, you know, we've been around for a long time. We've had much worse experiences than October 7th. We have. We've had much worse experience. Since the Holocaust we haven't, but we've had much worse experiences throughout our history. And one of the reasons why I love being a Jew is because the spirit of the Jewish people is just remarkable. At the end of the day, we are strong, and at the end of the day, we rebound, and at the end of the day, we don't allow negativity to define our existence. And that same people who, and again, this is an Auschwitz analogy, but it's the same people who came out of Auschwitz and chose to have children. I always speak about them because for me, they are the greatest heroes that I could even conceive of in Jewish history. Anybody who came out of Auschwitz and still said, I'm going to rebuild, like, where did that, like, we are nothing compared to that generation of Jews who built everything that we have now, who had hope, who had vision, who didn't give up on morality, who stood for values. So we had we got a hit. And there's real sadness. But I still believe in that Jewish spirit, and I see it. It's not a naivete. I see it. It's right there now. It's not the government, and it's not Netanyahu or who's the next great white hope who's going to somehow redeem. You're with the wrong people. You're also with the wrong politicians. But it's just we are a great people. And the last year, even in the midst of this war, forget even in the midst of this war, precisely in the midst of this war, to see the way people volunteered, to see the way people went to war, to see the courage and the conviction. I'll bank on our people. I'll bank on us. I'll bet on us. But if we do it with caution and humility, vision will prevail. I think our people are looking for it, and I hope we'll have the wisdom to guide them to the place that will represent the Israel that has to be.
Amen. Before we open it up for questions, I just, speaking of wisdom, wanted to ask, what's a piece of Torah that guides you right now?
There's so many parts. One piece of Torah is the recognition of our tradition in the moral legitimacy of self-defense. Our tradition is unambivalent about your right to fight for self-defense. And the morality, our tradition understood that war is a catastrophe, but it's necessary and it is a moral imperative at times. And there's a normalcy and a health to that, and I think part of what we have to teach in defense of Zionism is the legitimacy of our right to be. And the other part, it's this, I don't know, there's so many parts. There's like so many things, and there's that. What's hateful unto you, do not do unto others, is never more than this far away from my consciousness. And as I shared at the opening of our board meeting, there's something just right now that I'm getting comfort from. And so I apologize for repeating this for the few people from our board, but a week or two ago, when God promises Jacob that he's going to go forth to the west and to the east and to the south and the north, like, wow, I'm your God, and if you're on my side, you're gonna be the empire of the world. And Jacob answers him and says, God, if you bring me home to my father's house, and you give me food to eat and clothing to wear, you'll be my God. I don't need to be Startup Nation. I don't need to be a superpower. There's something about just let me be home. Let me be safe. Let my kids, not have to worry. It's so funny when you see the world through your like now I'm an Alta-Kacker, I see the world through my grandchildren's eyes. So Shabbos, October 7th, my 2 grandchildren were sleeping in my house. Like Friday night, sometimes the present is after the meal, they get to sleep by us. And I don't believe that children have any right to tell grandparents what to do with the grandchildren. Sorry, you don't get to tell me. I give them Diet Coke and candy. It's like, it's like bribing, sure, but it's not. There's our world, and just get out of my world. Like, don't. When they have to go to sleep and what they're supposed to eat, just leave me alone. That's just not. You're ruining grandparenthood. So they love staying with us, and so and that's fine. So Friday sleeping over is just great. There's no bed. We just have a wonderful time. And at 6:30 in the morning, we don't have a security room, but we have steps. down in the bowels of the earth. And so we go there, and just having to talk to them, and like having to deal with their fears and issues that they never even thought about. And I have one of my granddaughters studies in the Old City. Her school is in the Old City. It's actually 10 yards away from where her great-great-great-grandfather was born. That's right, it's literally right in the Old City. And she, is trying to find her little place of security, like in the midst of all of this mess. And she says, I'm the safest person. Why? Because I study near Har Habayit. How would I say that in English? Near the Temple Mount. And they're not going to fire on the Temple Mount. So she says, I'm the only one who's safe in Israel. Like, I could go to school, but it's like beautiful to see, but that's really sad. So I want clothing and a place to eat. Like, that Torah of getting back to the basic needs of life. And maybe we have to stop thinking about tikkun olam. I never cared about tikkun olam. I never understood it. It was too big for me. I don't know what to do with it. It was just, it's too big. But maybe we have to stop. There's something about that Torah which says Zionism is also back to that basic. Mm-hmm. It's not just only about meaning and about moral vision. It's also about, I just, don't tell me about I'm going to go west and east, and don't tell me about greater Israel and world peace, and just give me a place that I'm safe. And so when I saw that verse in the Torah, and as I shared to him, I'm 65 and I never noticed it. I never noticed the discrepancy between God's promise and what Jacob says, don't hak me a chaynik. That's a technical term. Don't pound on my head. Just don't promise me the world like you promised Abraham and Isaac. Like, don't promise me that I'm going to be the center of the universe. Are you going to take care of me? And that's reconnecting to that part of our mission also gives me a lot of hope, and it focuses me on what's really important sometimes in life.
Can you hear Ratzon? I think we're going to open up for questions. Rabbi Ethan Linden. Oh, I don't know. Rebecca.
I promised you, Donniel, I'll do it. Donniel, I'm Israeli living outside. I feel disconnected. And your podcast, like for many of us, has been really connecting us with Israel. And I find you are my friend, but now I find you as a soul of the nation. I think we listen to you here, and I really feel you represent an aspirational part of all of us. I recommended this podcast to friends of mine, and I was shocked when they said that, oh, Donniel, he's a leftist. Now, I know that you talk to Palestinians and you are touchy-feeling, but I remember after the Holocaust in Israel, I grew up, we didn't talk about things, and now we refuse again to talk about things. We want to be nua, like tank, move. I said to them, he's a tank commander. He talks to people in the army, he teaches them Torah. But I find the biggest word that I find useful today is the echo chamber word. We talk to people that agree with us. Now, you're talking to Palestinians. Are you going to be able to talk to the people who elected Smotrich and Ben-Gvir? Because they are growing group of people in Israel. And this is my problem.
First of all, you have the wrong friends. I talk to them all the time. I have Ben Gvir voters who are students at the Hartman Institute. So first of all, if someone says you're liberal or left, I say thank you. Like, I'm not going to let somebody own. Like, you know, really, thank you. That's a meaningful category for you, fine. Someone wants to play that game, you're never going to win anyway. But at the Hartman Institute, I live with settlers, I live with Smotrich voters, I live with Ben Gvir voters. I have students. I live with anti-Zionists. I don't live in an echo chamber. By the way, most Israelis don't, because every family is divided in Israel in ways that you don't understand. Like, and there's a whole discourse around what's allowed to talk about on a Shabbos table, which might be similar to what rules about what you talk about at a Thanksgiving dinner, but now imagine 52 times a year. You're there. Like, there's the whole spectrum at your table. But the Hartman Institute, our faculty, our students, the people we're reaching, we're not an echo chamber. I don't just speak to, I'm proud of the fact that now I am learning not to speak to hear Palestinian voices. I'm happy that I'm learning to hear them. But I've been learning to hear for years. Settler voices, Likud supporters. Ben Gvir supporters are tough. They are. But some of them are more complicated than you know. They have multiple reasons. And the challenge of the Hartman Institute is I don't have a desire to speak to everybody. I don't. But I do have a desire to create a large coalition of the majority of Jews and the majority of Israelis. I do have that yearning for a Zionism and a Judaism that encompasses many people, that goes beyond some of the dichotomies that are so comfortable. And so, your friends, tell them not to listen, because it's just going to reaffirm whatever they want. It's just a waste of time. It's just like, you know, it's, and by the way, the podcast is doing good enough right now, so we're like, we're doing just fine. So it's like, it just doesn't matter, and it's okay. And I tell people, I've said this throughout my career, when people come to me and they ask me certain questions, and I respond, and then sometimes they ask again, and I get it. Sometimes I say, you know, I'm really not the right teacher for you. My Torah is not helpful to you. You know what? It's just not good for you. And that's, you have to let it go. But the Hartman Institute is working and also here in America. Also, listen, we were one of the only institutions in North American Jewish life which was officially invited to speak both at APAC and at J Street in the same year. And that was a source of great pride for us. I don't want to play those divides. I don't want to play enemies. I don't want to play who's outside. And again, I know I've mentioned this 2 or 3 times. And Yehuda, I'm sorry, but I'm going to mention again your latest article, which is trying to find what are the new lines that we should be looking at, which are not the standard left-wing, right-wing divide. And when you spoke about who shows up at the demonstration. And so all the people who you claim are the non-Zionists or your enemies, but in Israel, that's the Hartman Institute. And it's actually far more interesting and far more vibrant than some of the echo chambers that you're still living with. But there are people who also won't talk to me, also in Israel. And that's okay too. But there is a group that's waking up and saying, we want to talk. And we realize that we need to talk. And there are actually values that we share. And we want to explore the consequences of them. I hope that was sufficient.
Donniel, we all know that Tzahal is about as moral an army as one can be, and we support it in multiple ways. But the elephant in the room is the way that the war in Gaza is being conducted. And it seems inconsistent with what we expect and what we know of Israelis and of Tzahal as well. What's new is that as American Jews, we feel responsible for this as well. And that's a very new, I think, phenomenon. How can you help us deal with these inconsistencies? So I think that's critically important for American Jews.
Say the last 3 words.
How can you help us deal with these inconsistencies? We expect that this is a moral, well-conducted war, and yet we feel that we see it as too indiscriminate. And that's a very difficult thing to deal with.
That's one of the hardest questions for me right now. And I want to answer on, it's not going to answer, I just want to respond on multiple levels. And some of them are going to be self-contradictory. I think I might have said this on a podcast, but it doesn't matter. One of the problems of Gaza is that I don't believe you can fight in Gaza in a way that you want to fight. I think the moral challenge of Gaza is that you cannot avoid killing civilians in great numbers. And this is, I could just talk to you. This is not something that I could convince somebody else about. I just want to talk to you and to people here right now. I have a right to live, and I have a right to conduct a war. And the circumstances of Gaza cannot make a just war unjust. That's Gaza. That's like, this is this dark reality that we allowed, again, our fault. In 2008, when Hamas took over, we should have gone in immediately. Or was it 2000? Immediately. We knew what Hamas is. And we allowed the creation of this terms, terrorist state. It's just of an evil infrastructure to grow and to dig and to build. I don't know how to fight in Gaza without extensive civilian casualties. And I know that I have a right to fight in Gaza. And the reality that they created cannot undermine my right to defend myself. That's the way I went to war on October 7th, psychologically. Another way that I went to war on October 7th is I was petrified of casualties to the Israeli army. Because one of the realities of Gaza is not only, as you all know, is there a complete enmeshing of a civilian and a military infrastructure in ways that is probably unparalleled in the world, and that means we need different categories to think about this place. And also, I'm an Israeli and I'm a Jew and I worry about my children. And I knew they were going into Gaza, and I knew what that's going to mean. And part of me, therefore, embraced certain military decisions which would lessen my casualties. I don't know if that was a moral high point, but it's also, you know, this war, I have nephews and friends. I don't have children in this war. It's the last war I did. And I remember telling my son Yitzi, if you're in danger, please do me a favor. Shoot, and then we'll talk about the consequences. I didn't want him dying because I was worried about who was standing next to a terrorist. I didn't want him to die. And as a father and as a member of a society, it's also part of what Israelis were thinking about. And again, I don't know how you explain that to somebody. I don't know. And the third part is that I know that Israel is not using the same standards this war that we used in other wars. I know we're not. Part of it is because our military objectives are different. The other part was just to create some balance of fear so that we could declare victory and get a few years of quiet. And we didn't have to do as much. And that the goals of this war require far, or the aspirations of this war are requiring other more extensive bombings. But I think right now, I think we're going to have to give an accounting for some of the things that we did. I don't think that everything we're doing in Gaza is acceptable. And I don't want to think about it right now. And I can't think about it right now. But I know we're going to have to think about it. And again, this is minor. This is nothing. We blew up the Palestinian parliament. Why? Wasn't even from the, why? What? There's part of the challenge is that, and I use this term not lightly, but in a time of war and when you begin to kill, there are lines that are crossed. And right now, we can't talk about it. Right now, we're fighting and our children are there. And I don't know enough to know whether this bomb was necessary or not and what they're trying to get at. But I know, and again, I could compare to prior wars. We found, 10,000 military targets? I hope, as a society, we're going to be willing to talk about it one day, because I think it's going to be necessary. I don't believe that Israel being the most moral army in the world is an attribute that you inherit. I believe that it is an attribute that you earn. And we're going to have to ask ourselves. And I don't want to be an armchair person in a shul arguing right now, and there's things that I don't know. And I know how impossible a war in Gaza is. So I don't know what the decision will be, but I know that your question is a question that we're going to have to ask ourselves. And it'll be good for us to ask ourselves that question. Because the Israel and the army that I'm committed to is an army that aspires to be a moral army. And a moral army is judged by the questions it asks itself, sometimes before, sometimes during, and sometimes afterwards. Right now, and I'm tortured about this, I want us to win. I no longer know what winning looks like, and I no longer know if winning is attainable. And as a liberal Jew, I embrace the right of the Jewish people to value our own life and our own existence. But there's questions that we're going to have to ask. And those questions will benefit Israel and Zionism in the long run. So I don't know if you feel that I answered, but it's the best that I could do right now.
I think we have time for one more question.
Hi, Rabbi. Thank you so much for being here. I was hoping you could speak to, I am having great difficulty as I grew up and I have always been a liberal Jew, a liberal Zionist, a supporter of Israel, a liberal Democrat. I have always supported with my money, with my time, with my influence, such that it is marginalized populations here that needed support, from Black Lives Matter to the Asian community to the LGBT community, in every single way, and I never hesitated. And what I am profoundly sad about and having such a hard time with is that I feel that I and Israel and American Jews have been completely disregarded by those communities, and in fact, blamed by those communities, threatened by those communities, and I am afraid and I am terrified, and I feel that is a disloyalty that only happens with Israel and the Jewish people in times of crisis. And I do not know how to wrap my head around that, and therefore have the same level of open-minded support that I used to have for the Palestinian people and for a two-state solution. That is the cyclical thing that is happening that is causing me so much despair and sadness. And I was wondering if you could talk about that.
We don't understand it. Black lives still matter. LGBTQ rights still matter. They do. Fair enough. That's what we don't understand. And that's, I appreciate the pain, and I feel the loneliness that you feel. And I wish I had an answer for you. There's an unknown that we don't, right now we don't know how to put our hands around it. So we use the term anti-Semitism. It's like sort of a term that we use for the unexplainable. Why is it that there's such a sense of blindness to our rights. I don't think any of us have an explanation. I have this whole theory. Again, it's not, part of I haven't done a lot of thinking about it, but I never tried to explain anti-Semitism. Never tried. For me, my explanation was, it's evil, it's on you to deal with. I'm not going to explain where it comes from. It's just evil. I think there's an evil that you're experiencing. And part of your job is to protect yourself. You don't have to explain it. You can't convince. Somebody said to me, I don't know if anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, but why does it matter? When those people see anything connected to Israel as evil, it's that same blindness. I wish I had words of comfort for you. I wish I had some insight to tell you, yes, they're good, but. Like, in our tradition, we never use but after anti-Semitism. We never say they're anti-Semites, but they're really good on the environment. There is no but. Anti-Semitism is a conversation stopper. What you're experiencing is, again, they're not seeing you on the most basic level. It's not about, you're not worried about people who want a two-state solution. You're not worried about people who are critics of Netanyahu or even critics of Israel's ignoring of Palestinian rights. All of that is fine. There's a deep denial of you that you're experiencing. And I wish I had words of comfort. All of us we're not going to heal that, but we're going to have to figure out how we live as liberal Jews and create different coalitions and different places that we join, because the values that we have remain the same. Even though some of the allies have turned out to be evil and hypocritical and people we don't want to be a part of. So, again, part of the Torah that we have to develop is, how do we go forward from here? Because there's certain places we can't be anymore. And so, one of the things when you don't have an answer, you could just say to somebody, I see you. I feel you. And you're not alone in that. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Donniel. I want to thank Rabbi Matalon. I want to thank you, Rabbi Sol. And I want to thank you, Donniel, Rabbi Hartman. And I want to thank all of you for coming, and just call your attention to the fact that Donniel's newest book is on sale in the back of the room. And I bet you could get him to sign it as well. Take good care.